Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. I'm Caroline Chen, and I'm a rising senior in high school. Today, I had the wonderful opportunity to speak with Miss Mary Beth Thompson, the Director of Teaching and Learning at Crystal Springs Uplands School's middle school campus. In our conversation today, we talk about a wide variety of topics, spanning from how she first got into education, her perspective on AI and productive struggle, the importance of diversity, along with so much more, and I can't wait to share what we discussed with you all. So without further ado, let's get into it. Yeah, thank you again for coming on today and to talk with me. So before, first I'd like to ask you about what led to you doing what you currently do.
Yeah. Well, I'll try to be better with my language because sometimes my economy of words is not great. But essentially, I think first things first to know about me is that my mom, is an educator. She actually was my eighth grade history teacher. So she taught myself, my sister, all of my cousins. So education and like being around teachers has always been familiar to me. When I went to school myself, I really fell in love with theater and theater arts. And so when I went to college in New Orleans, it was for theater. So I actually majored in theater. I did not want to be a teacher. I wanted to be a movie star. So I did that. I majored in theater. I moved out to Los Angeles. And when I moved out in my early 20s, right after undergrad graduation, is when I started sort of figuring out like the landscape of Los Angeles and like the different sort of temperaments and personalities of the different people that work in the different industries. And I was working in the entertainment industry, and even though I love film and theater and movies, and to this day I always will, I didn't find myself like really feeling like this is something I could commit to for the rest of my life. Um, and I was thinking a lot about, I was talking to conversations with my mom, and, I was like, I have, and she's like, well, what do you love? And I've always loved history. And I think it's the storytelling, which is why I liked the entertainment world. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll go to school for teaching because it's essentially history is just telling stories that have already been told. And the difference is the audience is the students and they have to be there. So I went to University of Southern California and got my master's in teaching, as well as my teaching credential. I met a boy. We moved up to Northern California because that's where he was from. So he was working as an engineer and I was working as a teacher in San Mateo. And then, and then sort of life happened somewhere in all of that. We got married, we had a child, we bought a house in San Carlos, and I sort of I wanted to try different challenges in my own. So I was teaching middle school, then I was teaching high school. Then I was ready to try administration. So I worked at a public charter school and became a dean of culture and instruction there, and then eventually became the executive director, which is in their world like principal
Hmm.
over there. So sort of like had done that for about almost 15 years of being on a school site. I ran for the school board of Sequoia Union High School District. So put my foot into politics, which is a whole nother story. Crazy. But one, which was fantastic, but it also meant that I no longer felt like it was the right time to work in a public school that was chartered by that district. And so that's what found me at Crystal. And that's when I moved to Crystal. Halfway through the year, took a paternity coverage and taught history again in middle school, and realized I really, really do love middle school and it's where I wanted to be. And then when the director of teaching and learning position opened up, it just felt like absolutely the right fit because of how much I was falling in love with Crystal and the middle school community. And knowing that I had been admin felt like a very easy transition.
Wow, that's crazy. You've really done everything.
I was like, how do I put this in this little tiny thing?
Yeah, you explained it really well. That's crazy. Yeah. I remember I dabbled in theater a little bit in middle school. I was in the ensemble of Matilda Junior, and I quickly discovered singing was not my thing. I felt it, but yeah, not what I
Yeah.
was for. But that's so cool. And it's crazy how you've done so much within education, whether it be a teacher or you said like running for school board and stuff.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was always destined. If I had stayed in theater, I was like, I was destined for chorus because I could sing, but not that well. And I was like, I got to do more than chorus. So,
Yeah, that's so cool though. And kind of like building off of that question, like you've obviously worked in so many different school environments and so many
mhm.
positions, and kind of what experiences kind of shape the way that you approach education as a whole?
Yeah, I think that there is something I have some for every school that I've worked at, I have learned so much from the environment, from the students, from the community. It's really interesting, even because I've worked now in an archdiocese school. So I've worked at a Catholic school, I've worked at a public charter school, I'm on the board of a traditional public district, and then of course I'm at Crystal, which is an independent school. My own background is when I grew up in St. Louis, I went to Sacred Heart, so that's my independent background is there as well. And I think each sorry, ugh, allergies. I think each one of those experiences really taught me, one, how unique and different each school site can be. And it doesn't matter if it's both independent or they're both public. It's the people that make a school site. It truly is, and what those longtime visions are, and what the school's mission is, and whether or not they really use that mission as a North Star. That's what makes up the differences of the different types of schools, I think. And so for me, I think when I first started teaching and I was brand new and I had some clue what I was doing, but like looking back at it, I was like, oh man, what was those kiddos? Man, God love them because they put up with a first year teacher. But I remember specifically teaching fourth grade for my very first year because that was the job I could get. And like, I didn't know how to like classroom manage a lot. Like, I was like, what are, like these 10-year-olds wouldn't stop talking. I was like, Shh. And so like it was learning that and having this father who who had four kids, and I was teaching one of not the oldest, not the youngest, and he just was so kind and was like, hey, I'm just letting you know, like, my child loves your class, but he's really struggling because he wants structure and he wants that, and he just approached it with such kindness. And it was really this first piece of lesson that I got in the classroom that feedback can come from anyone and anything if you're open to receive it. So to this day, I think about that father and that son who just really helped me realize that, holding boundaries and putting into structure helps students. Most of the time they want it, they're just not going to ask for it. So like that was such a eye-opening experience as a first year teacher, and I think about my experience at the public school and how I didn't look like many of my families that I taught. I didn't look like many of the students. Sometimes I didn't even speak the same language as some of the families when I would be interacting with them, and how important that diversity and perspective and putting yourself in someone else's shoes. I think at that school setting, that's what really taught me about what does it mean to practice diversity, to think about equitable situations, to recognize my own biases, um, which I think for a while I sort of lived in a bubble, and that school really helped me understand that, like, no, there's so many more perspectives out there, and like what am I holding and what am I bringing into conversations, and especially as I got into admin, the conversation a lot of the times was like being aware of who wasn't in the room, and like being careful not to necessarily speak for them, but making sure that they still had a presence at the table. Um, and then coming to Crystal and just absolutely recognizing um, how incredible the kids are in terms of their eagerness to learn. The idea of curiosity is just like not a buzzword, but something that like I truly see in our students every day of wanting to like what's it there's some saying that I'm going to get wrong, but like squeeze the juice or like squeeze the lemon to get everything out of it. Like that's how I see our students. And sort of I think Crystal kind of renewed an appreciation for what it means to be a lifelong learner because I see it in the faculty and the adults in the building too. Yeah, so every school I've taught at or I've been at or I've gone to or I visited has taught me a lesson in its own way.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think like everything you said was really powerful and it made me like really understand like how much experience you truly have as an educator. Like you first told your story and now like you're sharing all these experiences. And like I definitely resonate a lot with like the trying to manage little kids when you talked about like managing the fourth grade class because
Yeah.
I teach like a fourth grade class of like Mandarin students
Oh,
over
wow.
and like every single, like after every single lesson, like I feel like I've lost my voice by the amount I've had to shout over them. Like they're so rambunctious. Yeah.
I
But
totally resonate with that. Yeah, I'm impressed. Do you do that after school?
no, I do it on the weekends. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you
Well,
are just like go, go, go all the time.
not all the time. Like I still need my breaks. Yeah, like after that I'm just like so done. Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of energy. But anyways, like I think everything you shared about like being able to account for diversity and take into like account of other people's perspectives, like all that's really
Mhm.
powerful. Yeah. And kind of like in what ways do you, because I feel like as the director of teaching and learning, you're doing less of like directly like front facing with the students, like
Mhm.
in terms of the teaching. So like how does your work behind the scenes shape students' day-to-day learning experiences at Crystal?
Yeah. I think I was actually thinking about this the other day because I was sitting in expansion hall and I was looking at the students and I was looking at my advisees because I have, my 13 advisees and but then I was walking back to my office and I passed the sixth graders and a bunch of them were like, "Hi, Miss Thompson. Hi, how was your day?" And I was like, "You guys are so cool. Like you don't even know me. Like how do how does that happen?" But it's just this idea that like one, I think that there's a trust there that students have with the adults in the building, which is special. And I can tell you it's not there at every school. But there's this idea of like, hey, if you're an adult in this building and you've been hired here, like you must be trying to help or support or something to offer. Um, so I really appreciate that because that all when you already have a foundation of trust there, it makes it you don't have to work for it so hard. You don't have to like prove yourself. So then I think when I go into classrooms to do class visits and I watch the teachers and I see what they're doing and we have conversations about like what's working, what's not working. Our mission is about transformative teaching. Like, is this what we're doing transformative in one way or another? I hope that that's what's actually impacting the students. So even though like they might not see it, they just see me as an adult that I think they like every once in a while they come and say hi or they know me. What I hope is that there is that the behind the scenes work is allowing the teachers to shine because they're so good at their jobs. I saw an image once of like a pack of wolves and it was just a line of wolves like in the snow, trudging along and the idea was like, okay, well, which one is the alpha wolf, the lead wolf? And people always are pointing to the first one in the line, like, oh, it must be that one, the one leading the pack. And actually the alpha wolf stands in the middle of that line because they're the one, like they're not up front and center, they're not like, but they're the ones sort of like who has an eye on the front but also an eye on the back. And that image has always resonated with me in terms of how I view leadership is yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm a theater major, I like the stage, I like the spotlight, and like I'm not like I'm not good at everything and I'm not perfect and I have so many like things to learn still. But what I can do is hopefully use some of the knowledge I've gained in the last 15 years of education of supporting others and just being their amazing selves.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really interesting. And kind of like building off of that, what kind of teaching practices have you seen that make the biggest difference in like student engagement and understanding that's kind of like beyond just grades, but like their level of engagement with the material?
Yeah, I think this has changed, to be honest, since when I first started teaching, even when I was first in school to where we are now. And yes, you can say, well, it's because of technology. And I was like, I'm not going to say it's because of like AI and computers, but what I am going to say is it's a lot of it has to do with like the instant. Like 20 years ago, if you wanted to find something out, you couldn't like immediately grab your phone and look it up and be like, oh yeah, so and so starred in that movie. I knew I recognized her. Like that wasn't that instantaneous piece of content wasn't there. And so I think what I've learned over the years is like what keeps students motivated when in theory they can get anything they want at any time. And what they can't get at any time is that idea of trial and error, of experimenting, of struggle. I know like we've talked a lot about an ask productive struggle, but that is the piece you cannot get that instantaneous. You cannot be, the basketball player or the movie star or the, you know, astronaut. I'm trying to think of like I have a 4-year-old. I'm like, what are all the things he said he's wanted to be when he grows up in the last 5 minutes? But like you can't be any of those things without time. None of that comes instant. And so I think the piece of the puzzle that holds students engaged in the classroom is that opportunity to practice that persistence or resistance, that opportunity to engage in something that's meaningful for them so that they have agency and choice in the matter. They can choose what's relevant to them, but they also it there's a phrase in education called the ZPD or the zone of proximal development. And it essentially means that if a student is learning something that is out of this like sweet spot and it's too far up, they're never going to get it because it's going to give up. Like the mental elephant is going to win. Like too hard, I'm not moving, trying to move an elephant to go somewhere that they don't want to go, not going to happen. But at the same time, if it's too easy out of their zone, they're not learning anything. So it's like finding that sweet spot. And I think that's what keeps students engaged is keeping them in their zone and finding things that are culturally relevant, timely, and allows them to have that productive struggle that's going to keep them sort of coming back and looking at different things from different angles and not giving up.
Wow, that's so cool. I've never thought of like you said like the ZPD zone of.
It's a famous dude who said it, or who's like, it's all the research. I can't remember, but I'm sure and this is embarrassing. I should know his name. But yes, the zone of proximal development is just something that's always stuck with me. I learned that in my master's school, and I'm like, oh man, that applies to like everything.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And like the way, like the different ways that like impact how students engage with the material.
hmm
And does like, is like the way you study that, is it impacted by like the way the material is delivered, or is it more of just like the difficulty of the content, like you said?
I think it's both. I really think it's both. I think the the master teachers are the ones who can find what the right challenge of content is and the right way of delivering it.
Hmm.
Um, but I also think about like, I'm a history gal, so I'll pass by like Math 2 Advanced in middle school, right, which is a high school, essentially more of a high school course, and I'll watch that and I'm listening to them and I'm like, and those students are just like soaking everything Mr. Kwong has to give them, like they want that information. And if you put me in that class, I'd be like, is it over yet? Like, is the bell gonna ring? Because that's just not how my interest brain works. And so I think sometimes it's content, sometimes it's delivery, and a lot of times it's both.
Hmm. And like you said, it kind of like depends from student to student, like the way
Yeah.
they absorb.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm. That's so cool. Yeah, that's one new thing I learned today. Thank you for sharing about that. And kind of like shifting onto the topic of AI now, like how have you seen AI tools, especially like at the middle school? I know we just did the productive struggle.
Yeah.
I was looking over that actually, and some of the results were really interesting.
Oh, I
But
cannot wait to hear about it. You're
but
gonna share it, right?
yeah, we will. But
Okay. Okay.
back to the, sorry, I got sidetracked. But like, how are you seeing AI tools kind of like impact teaching and learning, both in
Yeah.
middle school, but like also in school in general?
Yeah, it's so interesting because, Crystal, for example, has really, come out being like, yeah, we recognize that AI is here and we're not going to shy away from it. And they've been really supportive in sending teachers and admin, myself included, and like Miss Rubin to different like AI workshops and conferences and things. And one of the things that I went to was someone said something that like most independent schools have this like spectrum where it's like AI is the enemy or AI is the savior, and like and it does and what he was trying to tell us is like it actually doesn't matter at this point where you are, but you need to commit to somewhere on that so that you can learn and figure out how you're going to teach your students around it. And I think we're if we're looking at the spectrum, we're on this over here from the middle. But I think about that a lot and being like, where do we stand on it? And for me, it's making sure that we're keeping up on the research, but I say that in air quotes because the research is changing all the time when it comes to AI. So when I say keeping up with the research, I actually mean like keeping up with the tried and true trends of teaching that we know aren't trends actually, but foundational best practices. So when you apply something, oh, I think it's Levitsky who said ZPT. I don't know. It's going to bother me. See, I could instantaneously find it, but I'm not going to. But when we think of something like the ZPD and your zone of proximal development, that has been around since the 70s, that research and why it's so important, but it can be applied to AI and using AI and looking at it as like, hey, if you are typing things into an AI and it is giving you all of the answers, you are obviously out of your zone and you're not going to learn anything. Because whereas if you're typing into AI being like, tell me the quantum physics and analog blah blah blah, I don't know, making up STEM terms because again, it's all another language to me, you're going to be so far out of your league that it can spit back everything about it, and I'm not convinced you'd actually understand anything it says anyway. And so I think when I look at how AI is here, I think about it in terms of what's going to stick around, what are the foundational best practices that's never going to change in education, and then how do we use AI to benefit us as a tool, and not a replacement of learning. So I think I would I think we're not using it in the middle school as much. We're not opposed to using it in the middle school by any means. And I'm saying we as a collective, and that's going to be very different depending on what the teachers are, and where they are. I just think that there's so many best practices that work with middle school students because of where they are developmentally, that it's sort of like, well, I need to make sure that those skills get mastered before layering in another tool of AI. And I think sometimes I want us to like experiment perhaps a little bit more with that. But I also like the techs, I've heard Miss Rubin say this, that the tech emergency is not our emergency. And so if we rush through it and try to like master all of this, like that's not going to work either. So yeah, I think that's where I'm trying to ground myself on is I'm for AI for it with using it for a time and place. Like it has its time and place.
Yeah, that's so that's so insightful. Like all the ways that we still need to like maintain our
Mhm.
learning ability rather than just having like AI give us all the answers or like
Yeah.
shortcut our learning. And like how can we make sure that students are still able to experience productive struggle, like you said, like within their learning while still like adapting to AI and like learning how to harness those tools? Like what's some
Yeah.
advice you'd give to students?
I think it goes back to what you're saying in terms of like how do you make schools still relevant to students, and it goes a lot to agency, to choice. And again, that's a best practice that doesn't have to do anything with AI or technology, but it's when students get to choose how they learn, what they learn, um, how they show they've learned, there is a more intrinsic value or a more intrinsic motivation to want to do that. Um, I was listening to um and I think her name's Dr. Becky Kennedy, and she does a lot of like children's and parent help. So I listen to her when I'm like, why is my child having a tantrum? But anyway, so she has a lot of stuff, and do you know like Mark Rober with Crunch Labs and
Yes,
all that?
I
Yeah.
did. My brother loves Parker.
My 4-year-old loves Mark Rober. But
3-year-old.
anyway,
Wow.
we were watching one of the ones that's like the squirrel, like trying, like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
the
I've seen
squirrel
that.
obstacle course. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I could watch that over and over again. But she was saying how like if you watch that, kids are obsessed with that that episode or that concept. And it's not that Mark Rober gets it right away. It is trial and error over and over and over again. And he observes and he watches. I mean, it's like the definition of science, right? Like experiment and try again and go back and forth. But like that's the creative process. And she was like, and so she's like, and that's what, we can't forget with our, she was talking about, I think, children. Um, and I'm talking about it with students is like, let's double down on creativity and let's not forget that like that is that creative aspect. And right, creativity is going to show up differently. Is it writing a sonnet? Is it solving a proof? Is it, playing the piano? Like creativity is going to show up in a lot of different ways, but it's how do you harness that in a way that keeps students motivated to continue to engage? So I think those are some, I don't know if I fully answered your question, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about in terms of like keeping students engaged and interested, and working through the productive struggle of their own, because they want to see the squirrel get the walnuts, and they're going to keep trying because the end, like the process is just as important as the end result.
I see. Yeah, that's a really good analogy to use. Like, I think I managed to get what you were trying to talk about.
Okay, phew. Sometimes I'm not always sure.
It's a really good analogy. Yeah. And I've watched that video so many times. Like
it's so good.
It is. I agree. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, I think that's really interesting how like students still need to maintain that process, even when like you were saying, it's like really easy to just like shortcut learning with AI. Yeah. Well, that's kind of all I had for you today. Okay, so thank you all so much for listening to my conversation with Miss Thompson. Again, a huge shout out and thank you to Miss Thompson for taking the time to speak with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you to you all for listening, and I will see you all next time. Bye!